how bad is the problem of hate in this country right now?
Well, there are a lot of people for whom it is front of mind, that it's a regular experience for them, and I think there are a number of manifestations of that.
Stats Canada numbers show hate crime was already on the rise from 2013 to 2016, but then a dramatic jump. In 2017, there were more than 2,000 police-reported incidents, an increase of 47%. Racism, anti-Muslim acts.
It's a place where people go to find solace.
Clashes with the LGBTQ community.
None of us should be saying you can't use the bathroom because of who you are.
And that is from a special feature series that will air starting tonight and all this week on City News on the hate crimes in our country. So Breakfast Television, City News and Maclean's are working together on this, and we're taking a look at the growing problem of hate and what's being done to fight back. So as we launch this feature series, we have gathered a panel from various communities in Calgary. Joining me to discuss this is Imam Syed Suhrawardy, Minister Pam Rocker, and Rabbi Shaul Asadchi. Good morning to all of you, and thank you so much for being here. Such an important issue. Let's start with you, Imam Syed. Can you tell us just a little bit about how hate is affecting your community right now and how it's affecting you personally?
Hate definitely affects everybody, and affecting Muslim community more than maybe any other community, because we know that racism and intolerance towards Muslims is on the rise. I mean, across the country, 151% rise in Islamophobia. And in Ontario, 207% rise against Muslims, 85% rise in Quebec. So you can see the rise against Muslims is too much, and that is definitely affecting every Muslim community, every man and woman, especially the youth, those who go to school and colleges and the universities. They are the most vulnerable. Women are most vulnerable because of their hijab and because of their looks. So it is definitely not only a fact, but also causes depression, causes isolation, causes a lot of problem within the community.
It absolutely does, no kidding. So Pam, you and I have talked about this as well. How is it affecting your community?
I think the first thing that I think about is, yes, we can see the stats that say that hate crimes are on the rise for all different communities, but in my experience in my work, so many of the hate crimes and hate incidents aren't even reported because I think there's a lack of trust with police, there's a lack of trust with authority, and when you get into intersections with people of color and with vulnerable populations, I think it's often really hard, or maybe you have attempted to report it, but it hasn't been taken seriously. So I think what I'm also worried about, especially in this political climate and this polarized idea of us versus them, of how that's affecting people. And, you know, I would agree that especially our youth are really vulnerable, and they might be experiencing hate crimes in their home. And how do you report those sorts of things? And I think even myself, I'm privileged in many ways, but I know during the last election and me speaking up and stuff, you know, I got a tremendous amount of threats, right? So I think that we have access to being anonymous in a lot of ways, and people take advantage of that to bully others. And again, I'm an adult and I have agency, and so I really, I feel for those who I work with and the stories that I hear who, you know, they don't feel like they have recourse, or they've tried and they haven't been taken seriously, or they have, you know, problematic histories with the police. And I see that more and more anecdotally. So I think it's scary to me. And I would agree at the same time, it causes depression, because even if you hear about your community and who you are, even if you haven't experienced it, how you walk through the world is different if you know that people like you, who look like you or have your identity, are at risk.
Right, no kidding. What do you find, Rabbi, with your community?
Well, we too are experiencing an alarming rise in anti-Semitism. We've seen attacks against synagogues in the U.S. There's defacements of synagogues and Jewish institutions here in Canada. It points to the kind of incivility that we're experiencing in a larger sense in the society, and a lack of, I think, people reaching out to others to try to see the humanity in one another. We're basing a lot of our relationships on misinformation, stereotypes, prejudices, and so forth. And as a Jewish community, this is not anything new to us. We've experienced anti-Semitism for ages. And some people would say we're the canary in the mine. So we're the warning that society is corroding when anti-Semitism starts increasing. It's just a symptom of other kinds of ills that are taking place.
It's really unsettling, to say the least. Imam, what would you suggest that it's done in terms of how you practice on a daily basis?
How we practice our religion? Yeah, I mean, definitely, as Rabbi mentioned, the attack on places of worship is getting very common, whether it's a Jewish place of worship or Christian place of worship, or a mosque in Christchurch, in Sri Lanka, in Pittsburgh. So these are definitely not only a matter of concern, I think it's a concern for the whole society. I mean, if we are not safe in the most, the safest place on the planet, which is a sanctuary, which is a place of worship where you can feel safe. Right. So definitely it affects every Muslim when we go to a mosque, especially in Ramadan. I mean, we were very much concerned because Sri Lanka incident was very new, and Christchurch was quite recent, and Pittsburgh was very new at that time, and people were concerned what's going to happen. We pray every night, we fast during the daytime, and how people will react. But thanks God, at least in Canada, nothing happened major. But definitely when we go to our mosque, we are very much concerned.
Absolutely. We're going to continue this conversation. Thank you so much for just being here for a few more minutes. We'll come back to our panel discussion. But first, we do need to get a check on the forecast. Welcome back to BT, and we are back with our panel to continue our conversation about the rise in hate crimes in this country. So joining me once again to discuss this is Imam Syed Soharwardi, Minister Pam Rocker, and Rabbi Shaul Osadchi. Good morning to both of you. Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. So Rabbi, let's start with you this time. We've been talking about how hate crimes are on the rise in all of your communities, but what do you really think can be done to really fight back?
My thinking is that most of this is based upon ignorance, illiteracy, I say religious illiteracy, and there's an antidote, which is religious literacy. So our synagogue and some of the efforts through the Calgary Interfaith Council are to overcome this illiteracy, to start getting people to meet each other, to learn from each other, to learn about each other, to learn the tenets and practices of each other's faiths, so that you can engage in some meaningful conversation and dialogue. This overcomes a lot of the superficial information that people get through the media and other sources about what religious traditions actually believe. And this will help people stop quoting sacred literature from other religions that they've cherry-picked that purport certain things that the religion really doesn't represent.
Right, right. So. And Pam, what about your community? What would you like to see done moving forward?
I would echo some of the same sentiments. I think most of the discrimination that happens to LGBTQ people is religiously motivated. So even though I work alongside a lot of faith communities, mostly Christian communities, that's the biggest thing. It's the same thing, right? People using sacred texts to say, I actually have a duty to oppress you because this is what my theology says. Right. And so I think religious literacy and progressive theology really matters and saves lives. And I think just, a lot of people sort of say, well, I don't see it happening, or I don't experience it. And really believing the people who say this happens to us. We might not see it, we might not experience it. That might not be our tradition or our background, but I think it's really important for us to take those things seriously. And I would say, definitely that there are really positive things happening. And I've seen my work become sadly more relevant, but I think that's also sort of been a call to action for people who are affirming, who do have something positive to say, who do have an antidote to the loudest voices that are often the most negative, for us to take this moment to speak up.
Okay, terrific. And Imam Syed, what would you like to see moving forward?
I think moving forward, what we have been doing for quite some time is the unity of faith groups. In Calgary, we have Interfaith Council, as Rabbi mentioned. We have a Jewish Muslim Council of Calgary. So all these faith groups, different faiths or no faith, atheists or agnostics, I think we have to show unity, we have to express unity, and we have to stand up together in front of hate, racism, violence, and terrorism. So if we are united against this intolerance, then I think it will make a big change in the community and the society. On the other side, government has a very important role to play, which unfortunately, in my opinion, the government is not doing as effectively as they should have been doing. That they should, through their own resources and channels, they should spread the message of that we are all Canadian, we are all human beings, and yes, there are new immigrants, visible minorities, and those minorities should not be discriminated based upon their religion or their beliefs or their traditions. That is the government's responsibility, and government has to spend some more money and more time in order to educate everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here, and let's hope we've moved this conversation forward.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again to Imam Syed Suharwari, Minister Pam Rocker, and Rabbi Shaul Aseji. And again, tonight you can catch this hate series on City News at 6 o'clock and 11. The feature series is right across the week. Thank you so much again for being here. We're going to go for a break here on BT. When we come back, more news, weather, and traffic. Stay with us.